Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. The scariest version of a Sigma female isn't the one the world fears. It's the one she finally stops running from. Most people will never witness this transformation, not because it's rare, but because Sigma females evolve quietly, like a software update you didn't authorize. Yet suddenly everything in the system runs differently. Psychologists say that when a person stops seeking external validation, their decision-making becomes over 70% more efficient. Now imagine that applied to a woman who already analyzes everything, trusts almost nothing, and senses motives faster than most people sense Wi-Fi signals. That's the Sigma female final form, a version of herself so self-aware, so strategically calm, so emotionally bulletproof, that even she wonders if she's starting to scare herself a little. It's like unlocking a secret level in a game you didn't realize you were playing, except now everyone else is still stuck on the tutorial. And yes, she evolves without announcing it. One day she's minding her business, drinking her tea. The next day she's effortlessly outgrowing 3 people, 4 environments, and 1 deeply confused situationship by noon. But this final form isn't about becoming dark. It's about becoming undiluted. Today we're diving into the version of the Sigma female that even Sigma females hesitate to unleash, not because it's dangerous, but because once she steps into this form, there's no going back. Hold tight. This is where the evolution stops being polite and starts being legendary. Number 1. She realizes her presence. Alone resets the entire dynamic of any room. There comes a moment in a Sigma female's evolution when she finally understands something she used to dismiss. Her presence quietly changes everything. She's not performing, she's not demanding attention, and she's definitely not trying to dominate anyone. Yet people still shift when she enters a space. Some become more polite, some get nervous, some get strangely competitive, while others suddenly start talking too much or too little. And this happens without her saying a single word. What makes this powerful is that she never built her identity around influence. She never wanted to be the center of anything. Her intention was simply to be left alone to live her life without unnecessary noise. But her final form shows her a truth she didn't ask for. She has become someone who naturally sets the tone, even in silence. People subconsciously read her boundaries, her calm, her self-respect, and her emotional independence, and they adjust themselves, often without realizing it. This realization isn't about ego, it's about responsibility. She starts to understand why certain people feel intimidated, why some feel drawn to her, and why others feel exposed in her presence. Her clarity acts like a mirror. The more grounded she becomes, the more other people see the parts of themselves they try to hide. She never intended for her growth to make people uncomfortable, but she can't shrink herself just to avoid it. And that's where the fear creeps in, because she knows there is no way to unlearn this awareness. The final form, Sigma female, begins to walk through life with a quieter kind of authority. She doesn't need to speak loudly, move dramatically, or make declarations. Her self-possession is its own form of gravity. It pulls truth to the surface, disrupts false confidence, and forces authenticity from anyone who tries to interact with her. She knows she isn't better than anyone. She's simply someone who stopped pretending. And when a woman reaches that point, her presence becomes something people feel before they ever understand. Even she knows the weight of that carries its own power, one she didn't ask for, but one she can't return. Number 2. She no longer accepts the role people assign. Her a Sigma female's final form arrives the day she stops allowing people to tell her who she is supposed to be. Throughout her life, others have tried to label her quiet, mysterious, stubborn, intimidating, too independent, too detached, too selective. Most of these labels come from people who never took the time to truly understand her, and for years she tolerated it. not because she believed them, but because arguing felt pointless. Let them think whatever they want. That was always her attitude. But her final form changes something fundamental. She no longer gives people permission to write her story for her. She stops adjusting herself just to make others comfortable. She stops accepting roles that were built on assumptions instead of truth. She lets people keep their opinions, but she refuses to live inside the little boxes they try to place her in. This shift isn't loud. It doesn't come with speeches or declarations. It happens quietly, almost casually. She starts saying no without giving a long explanation. She stops attending situations that drain her. She stops pretending to be softer, smaller, or more predictable than she really is. She stops playing the part people expect and finally plays the part that feels real. And this is where things get interesting. Once she stops accepting roles, she notices how quickly some people get uncomfortable. They were never invested in knowing her. They were invested in controlling the version of her that made them feel safe. When that version disappears, their reactions reveal everything she needs to know. What truly defines her final form is the ease with which she lets those reactions roll off her. She doesn't chase clarity, she doesn't correct misunderstandings, and she doesn't try to fix anyone's perspective. She simply stands in who she is, fully and unapologetically. This kind of self-definition is powerful. It is the moment she becomes uncastable. People can't place her in a role anymore because she writes her own script. And for someone who spent a lifetime being misread, that freedom is not just empowering, it's transformative. Number 3, she chooses purpose over approval. Every single time. The final form of a Sigma female reveals itself when she stops chasing validation from anyone or anything outside herself. For years, she may have sought approval, sometimes subtly, sometimes without even realizing it. She smiled when people expected it, softened her opinions to avoid conflict, or ignored her instincts to make others comfortable. All of it was wasted energy, because nothing external could ever match the standards she sets for herself. When she reaches her final form, she no longer sacrifices her purpose for the sake of acceptance. Every decision, every action, every interaction is filtered through one simple question. Does this align with my path, my growth, my goals? Approval becomes irrelevant. Compliments no longer feel like rewards. Criticism no longer feels like a threat. She has begun to measure her life by her own barometer, and nothing else matters. This choice doesn't make her cold or disconnected. It makes her deliberate. She invests her energy only in what serves her trajectory, and in doing so, she begins to shed people, habits, and situations that drain her. Relationships that once mattered fade away naturally because they fail the test of alignment. She doesn't mourn these losses. She recognizes them as necessary casualties of growth. Her focus sharpens, and with it, her life begins to take on an almost surgical precision. Even she is sometimes startled by the clarity. There's a strange mix of liberation and fear in realizing that approval is powerless over her. She starts making moves that once felt risky, not because she craves attention, but because they are essential steps on her path. Her ambition, her choices, and even her presence become so uncompromising that it forces people around her to either adapt or drift away. In this form, she becomes almost unstoppable, not because she dominates, but because she refuses to be stopped. Approval is optional. Recognition is irrelevant. Only her purpose matters, and she guards it fiercely. That is the power and the danger of the final form Sigma female. She has learned to live entirely on her terms, and she does it without apology, without hesitation, and without looking back. Number 4, she stops shrinking her standards to make others feel taller. The Sigma female in her final form refuses to bend herself to make anyone else comfortable. For a long time she may have dimmed her intelligence, softened her opinions, or overlooked inconsistencies in others just to keep the peace or avoid friction. She understood that people often feel insecure around someone who is unapologetically themselves, and for years she accommodated that discomfort. She tolerated mediocrity, excused behavior, and softened her boundaries, but that ends in her final form. At this stage, she no longer compromises her standards for anyone. She doesn't lower expectations to make others feel smarter, more accomplished, or more confident. She doesn't pretend to be less capable to avoid threatening someone's ego. Her standards become absolute because they aren't arbitrary. They are reflections of her integrity, her goals, and her understanding of what she deserves. People notice, and reactions vary. Some are intimidated, some resent her, some are drawn to her clarity. None of that matters to her anymore. This refusal to shrink herself isn't arrogance. It's survival and self-respect. She realizes that every compromise she made in the past came at the cost of her energy, her ambition, and her peace of mind. Every time she lowered her standards, she gave away pieces of herself. In her final form, that can't happen. She protects her life, her space, and her future by maintaining what she knows is right and necessary. Her uncompromising clarity forces people around her to either rise to the occasion or remove themselves. Friendships that were convenient but hollow fade. Relationships that were built on comfort over authenticity dissolve. She doesn't chase anyone. She simply lives in alignment with her principles. This level of self-determination is both liberating and intimidating. Even she feels the weight of it at times, because being unyielding means sometimes standing alone. Yet it's also what makes her final form so extraordinary. By refusing to shrink herself for anyone, she becomes a force that can't be diluted, redirected, or tamed. Her presence, her energy, and her standards demand respect, not through intimidation, but through the unshakable strength of someone who refuses to compromise who she is. Number 5. She realizes she can leave anyone without emotional consequence. Reaching her final form, the Sigma female discovers a kind of freedom most people never experience. The ability to walk away from anyone, at any time, without guilt, without doubt, without emotional hang-ups. This isn't about being heartless or cold. It's about clarity. She sees people for who they truly are, stripped of pretense, masks, and convenient illusions. She understands who belongs in her life and who doesn't. When someone's values, energy, or intentions clash with her path, she no longer negotiates, tolerates, or debates. It simply ends. The astonishing thing about this ability is how it rewires her entire emotional landscape. She stops replaying conversations, second-guessing decisions, or holding on to resentment. Walking away no longer feels like a loss because she realizes that keeping someone in her orbit who isn't aligned is far costlier than letting them go. Every goodbye becomes a reclaiming of her time, her energy, and her peace. She's no longer trapped by obligation, nostalgia, or fear of being judged for leaving. What makes this power terrifying even to her is how absolute it is. She recognizes the immense responsibility in knowing that she can detach without consequence. There's no turning back once she steps into this level of autonomy. The moment she exercises it, she understands the weight of her own self-sufficiency. Others may fear her decisiveness, but she fears it too because she knows she could become untouchable, untethered from anyone, even emotionally. This clarity doesn't make her immune to life's challenges. It makes her intentional. Every relationship, every interaction, every decision is chosen rather than endured. She doesn't leave recklessly. She leaves with precision, awareness, and purpose. And in that precision lies both liberation and subtle danger. Because once a Sigma female reaches this level, she has the ability to move through life entirely on her terms, and that power, once tasted, is impossible to forget or ignore. Number 6. She loses the instinct to explain herself. In her final form, the Sigma female reaches a point where she no longer feels the need to justify her actions, decisions, or even her existence. For years, she may have explained herself to avoid conflict, to be accepted, or simply to keep the peace. Every clarification, every excuse, every careful reasoning was a tether, keeping her bound to the expectations, opinions, and judgments of others. The turning point comes when she fully realizes, "You don't have to understand me for me to exist." That realization is both liberating and dangerous. It's liberating because she is free to act entirely on her own terms without the burden of seeking approval or comprehension. It's dangerous because the act of explaining herself was the last thread connecting her to social norms, external validation, and the familiar patterns of human interaction. Once she lets that thread go, she moves into a realm of autonomy where no one can predict her, influence her, or contain her. This shift transforms her presence and interactions. She doesn't react defensively when challenged or misunderstood. She no longer justifies her choices or defends her boundaries. Instead, she trusts in her own clarity and judgment, letting her actions speak for themselves. People around her may feel unsettled or intimidated because they are accustomed to having access to her reasoning, her compromises, and her consent. Now, none of that is available unless she chooses to provide it. Her liberation comes with a quiet, formidable power. She is untouchable, not because she isolates herself, but because she has severed the need for external understanding. She moves through life unburdened by the weight of expectation, unbound by the necessity to make anyone else comfortable. The Sigma female in this stage has crossed a threshold. She no longer exists to be explained or approved. She simply exists, and that unshakable presence, both mysterious and absolute, is what defines her final form. Number 7. She stops accepting apologies and starts demanding patterns. In her final form, the Sigma female moves beyond forgiving words alone. Apologies, excuses, and promises lose their power because she understands that true intent is revealed through consistent action, not fleeting statements. She stops trusting what people say and starts observing what they actually do. Every interaction, every behavior, every repeated choice becomes the measure of whether someone is truly aligned with her standards. Words without follow-through are irrelevant. Only patterns matter. This shift changes the way she approaches relationships entirely. She becomes extremely selective about who she allows close. People who once earned her patience or second chances through charm or guilt now find that nothing short of reliability and consistency will hold a place in her life. Friendships, romantic connections, and professional alliances are all filtered through the lens of repeated behavior. If someone's actions don't match their words over time, she doesn't negotiate, she doesn't argue. She quietly distances herself and reallocates her energy where it will be respected and valued. Her solitude, as a result, becomes profoundly peaceful. She no longer needs external validation, empty reassurances, or the temporary relief of someone's apology. She thrives in the clarity and control she gains by demanding accountability from herself and others. There's a subtle danger in this piece. It's so empowering that she may come to prefer it, enjoying a life free from disappointment and emotional volatility, fully aware that some people simply cannot meet her standard. This stage of her evolution makes her formidable, not through aggression or intimidation, but through precision. She doesn't manipulate or punish. She simply observes, assesses, and acts according to the truth revealed by consistent behavior. In doing so, She ensures that every connection in her life serves a purpose, reflects integrity, and aligns with her path. The Sigma female in this stage is untouchable, not because she closes off, but because she refuses to tolerate inconsistency, and in that refusal lies her extraordinary power. Number 8. She becomes at peace with being unreachable. In her final form, the Sigma female reaches a stage where she no longer feels compelled to be available to everyone all the time. She stops responding instantly, not out of arrogance but out of deliberate preservation of her energy. Conversations that used to drain her, people who thrived on her attention, and situations that demanded emotional labor no longer have access to her in the same way. She protects her mental and emotional bandwidth fiercely, understanding that her presence is a resource, not a commodity to be borrowed freely. Being unreachable doesn't mean she isolates herself entirely. It means she chooses carefully where her attention goes. She learns that saying less, responding later, or even disappearing momentarily doesn't make her distant. It makes her intentional. She curates the energy around her as she would any valuable asset, and she no longer apologizes for it. People may feel frustrated, confused, or even intimidated by her inaccessibility, but she has learned that their discomfort is a byproduct of her clarity, not her obligation. The fear in this transformation is subtle, but real. As she grows comfortable with being untouchable, she begins to enjoy the freedom of distance. She notices how calm her mind becomes, how sharp her focus grows, and how little external chaos can affect her. This enjoyment is intoxicating because it validates her choice to prioritize herself above the expectations and demands of others. The danger lies in the possibility that she may start relishing this space too much, to the point where the outside world feels almost irrelevant, a realm she observes but doesn't participate in unless she chooses. This peace, however, is not weakness, it's power. She becomes someone whose presence is no longer demanded, but respected, because she has mastered the art of being selectively reachable. She doesn't chase attention, she doesn't over-explain, and she doesn't allow anyone to drain her energy without consent. In this form, she moves through the world like a force that is both serene and untouchable, enjoying the autonomy that comes from knowing that she alone decides when, where, and how she engages. Number 9. She begins playing long-game strategy instead of emotional chess. In her final form, the Sigma female stops reacting impulsively to situations or people. She no longer lets emotion dictate her decisions or responses. Instead, she observes, studies, and tracks patterns with the patience of someone who knows that timing is everything. Every action she takes is calculated, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that preserves her energy and maximizes results. She learns to see the bigger picture, to anticipate moves before they happen, and to understand the subtle currents of human behavior that most people never notice. She stops playing emotional chess, where responses are immediate and often reactive. Instead, she plays a long-game strategy. She evaluates situations not for immediate satisfaction, but for long-term outcomes. She notes habits, predicts tendencies, and understands psychological space, the invisible distance people keep, the tensions they try to hide, the weaknesses they don't admit even to themselves. By doing this, she becomes far more than clever. She becomes unpredictable. People can no longer anticipate her moves because she doesn't move according to expectation. Her unpredictability is subtle, quiet, and extremely powerful. What makes this evolution intimidating is that even she sometimes underestimates her own foresight. She begins to notice how effortlessly she can navigate complex social situations, diffuse tension, and assert influence without anyone realizing it. Her presence becomes a force not through dominance, but through strategic awareness. The same intelligence that once made her hypervigilant now makes her untouchable. She no longer needs to control outcomes aggressively. She simply aligns her moves with the flow of reality, letting circumstances and people act as they will, while she positions herself advantageously. This shift transforms her into someone who commands space without words, influences outcomes without overt effort, and maintains complete clarity of purpose, while others are still reacting emotionally. The long game strategy isn't just a tool. It becomes a natural extension of her final form, making her not just powerful, but inescapably formidable, even to herself. Number 10. She starts evaluating relationships like high-risk investments. In her final form, the Sigma female approaches relationships with the precision of a strategist, treating them less like emotional connections and more like high-stakes investments. She stops letting sentiment or nostalgia dictate who stays in her life. Every interaction, every connection, every person in her orbit is assessed for value, longevity, and alignment with her goals. She asks herself questions no one else considers. Does this person elevate me or drain me? What is the long-term return of keeping them close? Are they reliable enough to justify the energy I spend on them? Her evaluation isn't cold for the sake of cruelty. It's clarity. She's learned that time and energy are finite resources, and she will not squander them on relationships that fail to offer authenticity, growth, or mutual respect. This approach transforms how she perceives people. Small inconsistencies, repeated broken promises, or a lack of alignment with her values become immediate red flags. Over time, she can calculate with surgical precision who deserves access to her life and who doesn't. The unnerving part, even for herself, is how detached she becomes in this process. She begins making decisions that might seem harsh to outsiders, yet they feel completely rational to her. People who were once close can be quietly removed if they don't meet the criteria. She questions her own willingness to let go, realizing that the audit of her relationships is ruthless and unyielding. But she also recognizes that holding on to anything that doesn't serve her path is a liability, not an act of loyalty. This mindset makes her presence magnetic, yet intimidating. She doesn't need to argue, prove, or defend her decisions. Her standards and discernment speak for themselves. The Sigma female in this stage knows that true growth is selective. Every person she keeps in her orbit earns their place through consistency, integrity, and alignment. Those who fail are left behind, not with drama, but with quiet, unshakable clarity. Her life becomes a carefully curated network of value, and in that precision lies her extraordinary power. Number 11. She becomes immune to flattery. Completely. When the Sigma female reaches her final form, flattery stops working on her. Compliments, praise, and sweet words no longer spark a rush of validation or self-doubt. They register simply as data points. She notices who is sincere, who is fishing for something, and who is trying to manipulate without even trying. Over time, she develops a kind of immunity to charm because she can read the motives behind it almost instantly. What once might have felt flattering now feels neutral or even suspicious as she analyzes intent before reception. Her awareness grows to the point where admiration and manipulation become indistinguishable in many situations. She understands that almost every interaction has a subtext, a hidden purpose, and a subtle angle. People unconsciously test her, compliment her, or exaggerate approval, and she sees it all. This level of discernment gives her immense control, but it also comes with its own burden, the fear that she might stop allowing any genuine connection at all. If every compliment is questioned, every gesture analyzed, how does she truly open herself up to trust or vulnerability? Her detachment isn't coldness, it's protection. She knows that falling for empty flattery is costly, that misplaced trust drains energy, and creates emotional debt. But at the same time, she fears that this shield could become a wall. The very clarity that makes her untouchable also risks isolating her from authentic human connection. This immunity transforms the dynamics around her. People realize quickly that they cannot manipulate or impress her superficially. She only responds to authenticity, consistency, and alignment with her standards. It's a quiet but undeniable power. No one can sway her with empty praise, no one can distract her with charm, and no one can cloud her judgment with manipulation. Yet the most fascinating and intimidating part is that even she sometimes questions whether the price of this immunity is too high, because it makes her both powerful and profoundly alone in a way few can understand. Number 12. She loses the instinct to explain herself. In her final form, the Sigma female reaches a point where she no longer feels compelled to justify her choices, her actions, or her very existence. For years, she may have explained herself to avoid conflict, to be accepted, or to make others comfortable. Every clarification, every justification, every carefully worded explanation acted as a tether, keeping her tied to expectations, opinions, and judgments that were never hers to carry. The breakthrough comes when she realizes, "You don't have to understand me for me to exist." That statement isn't just liberating, it's revolutionary. It marks the moment she steps completely outside the social scripts that once dictated her behavior. She no longer bends, apologizes, or rationalizes simply to satisfy someone else's curiosity or insecurities. She exists on her terms, without seeking permission or comprehension. This shift is dangerous because it severs the last tie that kept her grounded in others' validation. Social norms, peer pressure, and the constant need to be reasonable lose their grip. She begins to move through life unencumbered by expectation, making decisions and taking actions that are aligned solely with her path. The absence of explanation isn't arrogance, it's precision. She conserves her energy, sharpens her focus, and allows her presence to speak louder than any justification ever could. The impact on those around her is immediate. People accustomed to having access to her reasoning, her consent, or her compromise suddenly realize that she cannot be swayed by arguments, guilt, or persuasion. They feel her autonomy and, often subconsciously, are forced to respect it or step aside. For her, this power is intoxicating and intimidating at once. She knows the freedom she's gained comes with responsibility. She cannot rely on social reassurance or approval anymore. Yet, in that space, she becomes untouchable. By shedding the instinct to explain herself, she fully embodies the essence of the Sigma female final form, entirely self-directed, profoundly independent, and quietly unstoppable. Conclusion. The Sigma female final form is not a myth. It is a relentless evolution, a version of herself so self-aware, so precise, and so unapologetically aligned with her path that even she feels a quiet apprehension toward it. She is no longer swayed by validation, flattery, or empty words. She measures relationships like high-stakes investments, trusts patterns over promises, and moves through life with a calm, calculated awareness that few can comprehend. Her presence alone reshapes dynamics, her decisions carry weight, and her boundaries are untouchable. Reaching this stage is not about becoming cold or unapproachable. It's about becoming whole. She sheds expectations, social scripts, and emotional dependencies. She protects her energy, values her peace, and refuses to dilute herself to make others comfortable. Every move she makes is intentional. Every choice reflects her standards, and every relationship must pass the test of consistency and alignment. In her final form, she exists beyond the need for explanation, beyond the influence of external approval, and beyond the pull of anyone who cannot match her clarity. This version of herself is extraordinary, dangerous in its precision, and yet profoundly liberating. It is a state of existence where power, autonomy, and self-respect converge, where she can walk away from anything that doesn't serve her purpose without hesitation or regret. Even she sometimes fears it, not because it's unsustainable, but because it's intoxicating, absolute, and unshakable. If you've followed this journey through the Sigma female final form, you've seen what it means to become truly untethered, unshakable, and unapologetically yourself. This is the evolution everyone notices, but few understand. The version of her that transforms perception, shifts environments, and leaves a quiet but undeniable mark on everyone around her. If you found this exploration powerful, eye-opening, and intense, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the minds of the extraordinary. Like this video if it resonated, share it with someone who needs to witness this truth, and comment below with your thoughts or experiences, because understanding this final form is just the beginning of truly mastering the dynamics of power, presence, and self-mastery.